Hi everyone. I hope you guys can hear me well. I'm just going to give a minute or two in case someone wants to join us live. But today we are going to be talking about Chiron in the sign of Taurus. This is not going to be your usual video because I'm going to be looking at the transition from Aries to Taurus, and I'm going to be breaking this down for all 12 signs as well. The reason why I'm going to be looking at this transition is because Chiron is going to be back and forth in the sign of Taurus on June 19th, so less than a week time, and it's going to go back into the sign of Aries, and then it's going to be moving into the sign of Taurus for good 7 years. So because we are doing a live session, anytime you have a question, please drop it in the chat box. I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions, which is of course astrology related. It doesn't have to be necessarily all connected to Chiron. It's going to be a longer video, so most likely somewhere halfway through, I'm going to be taking just a few minutes coffee refill break, but I'm going to be letting you know. So, exciting times ahead of us, right? Chiron is moving into the sign of Aries. By the way, welcome everyone who has joined us live today. I hope this video will help you. I'm going to be walking you through the transition from Aries to Taurus with Chiron, and I'm going to be breaking this down for all 12 signs as well. So it should be a very useful and practical video, and then you can visit it anytime you wish to. So the transition of Chiron from Aries to Taurus is a massive shift of the decade. I mean, Chiron has been in the sign of Aries since 2018. And Chiron is connected to how we process vulnerability and healing, moving from the realm of identity and action to the realm of worth, security, and the physical body. And the reason why I'm going to be talking to you about the transition is because if you didn't do the lesson of Chiron in the sign of Aries, many of us will struggle with Chiron in the sign of Taurus. So unfortunately, this video is not for the lighthearted. It's going to be a little bit tough on you because I'm going to be really talking to you about the negative side of things. Last week, we spoke about Jupiter-Venus conjunction, and I was really just talking about the positive things. So today, let's be a little bit more on the negative side. Why I'm doing that is because I want you to avoid making the mistakes. So, Aries wound is the wound of existence. Do I have the right to exist? Am I enough just being me? While Chiron in the sign of Taurus, this is the wound of worth. Am I safe? Do I have enough? What is my actual value? So if the wound of existence with Chiron in the sign of Aries was about the right to exist, then how it manifests in real world is that we feel invisible. We might be overcompensating by being overly aggressive, those paralyzing self-doubts before starting any type of project. While Chiron in the sign of Taurus, the manifestation is financial anxiety, regardless of your bank balance. But it also could be body dysmorphia or getting stuck in toxic situations because I need security. Now, the healing path of Chiron in the sign of Aries was about reclaiming personal courage, sometimes having to take messy actions. And basically, the most important part is that you choose yourself. With Chiron in the sign of Taurus, this is about developing true self-worth, independent of external assets, anchoring in your own body, and mastering resourcefulness. So let's just look at this transition here a little bit. Because when Chiron moves out of the sign of Aries, it leaves behind the battlefield of identity. In Aries, the wound is urgent and raw. So the last 6, 7 years, or almost 8 years actually, imagine we have got a freelancer who constantly feels they have to fight for a seat around the table, at the table. And they over prepare, work 80 hours a week, treat every project like a war, because it's all about winning. Just to prove that I exist, just to prove that I am worthy for leadership role. So the healing here was about realizing that the right to exist isn't something you have to constantly fight for. Now, as Chiron crosses into Taurus, that frantic existential fight burns out and the focus turns inward, because Taurus is more of a passive sign. But it turns towards the physical and kind of like the material realities of life. Taurus rules the fixed, tangible world, such as money. Some even associate Taurus with properties, food, the physical senses, the five senses, as well as from a psychological perspective, that would be the self-worth. So when Chiron enters this space, the vulnerability shifts from who I am to what do I actually have? What am I worth? Yes, Taurus is about financial world. So Chiron in the sign of Taurus often creates this deep-seated fear of poverty, being completely disconnected from actual reality. Even when we have got a healthy saving account, we might feel like we are one bad day away from ruining it. So there is a tendency to overcompensate. And how do I do that? I'm going to be hoarding resources. I'm going to be refusing to spend money on self-care. We might become overly materialistic to kind of build a fortress against the world. What would be the healing of that? We need to be shifting from accumulation to resourcefulness, recognizing that true security comes from your skills and your ability to generate value, not just a number in a ledger. But a little bit later on, I'm going to be explaining this more in depth, because often what we tend to forget, and I've seen this so many times with students, that they have got a tendency just to focus on Chiron in Taurus, for example. But you might want to remember that the signs are built on each other. So you can have let's say a Taurus ascendant, but if you haven't dealt with Aries 12th house cusp, you are never going to master your Taurus rising sign. So the same applies here as well. If you haven't mastered Chiron in the sign of Aries, you can trust me on that. Chiron in the sign of Taurus is going to be a struggle. So if you need some help with decoding your chart, because obviously today I cannot look at personal charts, but you can book a consultations with me. My website is AstroViktor.com, and surely I will be able to help you understand how you can prepare more. So this video is going to be a little bit more generic. Of course, you have to be looking at what planets you've got in the sign of Taurus and what planets you've got in the sign of Aries as well. Now, imagine Taurus is kind of like the physical vessel. It could be the body wound. Taurus rules the physical body, the sensory pleasures. So Chiron here can show up as a disconnected relationship with the physical self. Why is that? Because if in the sign of Aries, which is kind of like the toddler, Aries is the first 18 months of our life. So if you didn't have a good experience in the first 18 months of your life, obviously Taurus, which by the way represents 18 months to 4-year-old period in your life, then when you go to school, you are going to be misbehaving, right? Because you didn't get what you needed. And what does a toddler need? They need cuddle, they need kisses from the mom, they need food, they need the mommy's boobies, they need mommy to be present. Right? So if some of those were missing, then in the sign of Taurus, we are going to be acting out. So the manifestation is potentially with Chiron in the sign of Taurus is ignoring physical burnout, treating the body purely as a machine to kind of produce results, or struggling with the body image and feeling uncomfortable in your own skin. Now, I gave you the freelancer example before, right? Because you were fighting to get your space at the table, but you overcompensated because you were working 80 hours a week because you wanted the boss to notice you. You wanted to get the promotion, for example, and so forth. And then if you ignore that and then you were not able to kind of deal with that, the manifestation of Chiron in the sign of Taurus would be physical burnout and potentially having certain type of medical conditions that you might be creating. And what would that be? For example, it could be connected to your throat, because Taurus represents the throat. It represents other things as well, but I don't want to be too medical today because that's not necessarily the aim of this session. So the healing would be that we have to be slowing down. It's kind of like working smart, not hard. So we have to be rethinking the way we are generating our income. We have to be reconnecting with our body through very simple practices like good food, strength, hitting the gym. Taurus represents kind of like bodybuilding because that is something to do with not necessarily with the muscles, that's more to do with Aries. Aries gives you the muscle and then Taurus starts building that up. And it makes it grow, really. So learning that the body isn't just a tool to achieve things, but it's actually kind of like a home that you are meant to be caring for. Now, the trap of Taurus is stuckness. So it could show up in two ways. Either it's going to be about security or actually it represents growth. Now, many astrologers wouldn't associate Taurus with growth, but it is growth as well. Why is that? Firstly, because it is ruled by Venus. Venus is a cold and wet planet. We all need those to be able to grow. And on top of that, obviously, this is about earth, right? So when you are planting a seed and then you put the water on it, that little flower is going to start blossoming at one point. So that's the initiation. Taurus is the initiation of growth. But imagine that the manifestation with that stuckness, because firstly, Taurus values stability, but Chiron can turn that stability kind of like in a cage. So people with displacement might tolerate, emotional discomfort or toxic work environments simply because it's predictable, simply because it is paying the bills, right? So it's very easy to stay in a dead-end job because the paycheck is stable, or remaining in a stale kind of relationship because change feels too physically destabilizing. So that would be a case, for example, for a Scorpio rising sign. The healing is that having to recognize that true security is actually flexible, not rigid. Real stability is being able to anchor yourself even when the kind of like the external landscape shifts. So I am very grateful for Chiron. Many of you most likely kind of like hate Chiron, right? But do let me know in the chat box below whether you hate Chiron or not. But to be frank, Chiron is in my third house. And at the beginning of my life, I always had issues of public speaking. I got humiliated because of the way I pronounce words, not just in English, but in my mother tongue as well. But then they started criticizing my English speaking abilities as well. And I kind of get spiked up as soon as that happens. And then I tend to be kind of like becoming defensive. And that's Taurus. It's kind of like piece of a bull, right? And then once they attack you, then you can be very afraid of the animal, right? But there is a gift here. When we are able to face our deepest wounds, then it turns into a talent of yours. And therefore, Chiron in the sign of Taurus is the ability, the gift of generating income. It's the crystallization of wisdom. Chiron represents wisdom. So Aries teaches us that the courage to initiate, to stand up for yourself is mega important. Chiron, the sign of Taurus, takes that raw courage and builds something stable with it. So if we had to be initiating something in the sign of Aries, and we had to be brave and, let's say, opening up a company in the worst time ever, then the manifestation of that in the sign of with Chiron in the sign of Taurus could be actually financial results, slowly but surely, because Taurus is not a fast sign. Okay, it builds something stable with it over time. And centaur or planet or whatever you want to call it, it's not necessarily a planet, but I'm not going to be going into the astronomical side of things. But Chiron spends the most amount of time in the sign of Aries. It spends quite a lot in Pisces and Taurus as well. And then it spends the least amount of time in the sign of Libra, Virgo, and Scorpio. So Libra is actually less than 2 years. Scorpio and Virgo is approximately about 2 years. Now, Chiron represents such things as animal welfare, but also it represents refugees as well. So we might want to talk about that too, because Chiron represents displacement, because Chiron never truly belonged to the world of gods or the world of the beasts either. He was very much of a wanderer, surviving kind of like on the margins. So collectively speaking, because this is a collective type of energy, it only spans approximately, it spans actually about 7-8 years in the sign of Taurus. So it's a longer transit. So often this is a little bit more collective. So it's kind of like, I can imagine scenarios that people are going to feel like they are forced out of their homeland. People might be thinking that they are stripped of their kind of like legal identity, or even placed in a position where you have to depend entirely kind of like on the bureaucratic mercy of governments or foreign structures. So again, the shift from Aries to Taurus, under Chiron in Aries, the refugee crisis was heavily framed by war and conflicts and borders. Those are very classic Aries battlefields anyway. It was about a threat, like an immediate physical threat to our existence. And it's kind of like a fight to cross the line to be able to survive. Now, as soon as Chiron transitions into the sign of Taurus, the crisis shifts towards lands and resources and climate as well. Taurus represents climate changes, but also economic survival. So the wound becomes about integration into that physical infrastructure. So where will these people sleep, such as refugees? How will they be fed? Who pays for it? How does a society share its physical resources, kind of like without triggering a survival panic? It really feels like those are going to be major topics coming up. Now, if we look at the animal welfare side of things, animals do not have voice. And animals are not necessarily something that is kind of like written in our legal systems. Why would, by the way, Chiron represent animals? Well, firstly, because Chiron is a half horse and a half human divine being. So he is holding kind of the literal bridge between humans and the animal kingdom. And Chiron understands the suffering of creatures that cannot speak for themselves. So, for example, a very prominent Chiron in your chart can show up as a veterinarian or like an animal rescue founder or a wildlife conservationist. I was looking for, yeah. A friend of mine actually has got this animal welfare type of channel, a lot of followers, and then he takes pictures of these wild, beautiful, especially birds. He's really into birds. What planet rules birds? Mercury. What planet rules animal welfare? Chiron. Guess what he has? He has got Mercury and Chiron conjunction right on his midheaven. So that's one of the positive manifestation, how he used the Chiron and Mercury conjunction. To be frank, he is not the greatest with communication, but yeah, there's a lot of wound there, in my opinion, but he definitely uses the Chiron and Mercury conjunctions there. But anyway, so again, the wound here is kind of like witnessing, let's say, animal cruelty, or there could be talks about how much meat we consume and how to kind of work on that, or the endangering of the wild animals. Again, the shift from Aries to Taurus, in the sign of Aries, the focus on animal welfare, it was very much about a direct action. I've seen that multiple ways, and kind of like how we kill the animals. With Aries, we are hunters, right? In the sign of Taurus, the focus is shifting towards sustainability, agriculture, the food supply chain. Taurus rules actually livestock, farming, and the earth itself. So under this transit, we should see that the collective wound forces us to look at how we treat the animals that feed us, the ethics of like the factory farming, the preservation of the land we live on. So the healing path here is about creating ethical, kind of like sustainable systems, rather than just kind of like killing those poor animals, for example. But let me see, guys, if you have got any questions so far. Someone says they are going to be having a Chiron return. Yes, I will be experiencing Chiron return. So Chiron return, let me just comment on that quickly. If you are somewhere between 43 to 50 years old, then yes, you are going to be experiencing a Chiron return at one point. I'm going to be experiencing this around age 47, so in about 4 or 5 years' time. But I would start the work right now, and I will be starting the work right now. And the reason being is because as soon as a planet moves into a new sign, regardless whether they make an aspect with the planet in the sign of Taurus, they start communicating. So you should see some signs of what to expect. So that's actually important to mention there. Someone says Chiron, Venus, Mars, all conjunct in Taurus, 10, 11th house. Great. How do you see people being born with Chiron and Saturn in Taurus? Okay, so I might try to reply on those at the end. So, so let's see that. Chiron in Taurus after 2020. Oh, yeah, after 2028. I think those are going to be the people who are going to be truly the greatest survivors of all. Because Saturn is about hardship and Chiron is about the wound, but in the sign of Taurus, that's really about a lot of survival skills that they are going to be building in a very positive or in a very negative way. We will see that, of course. So, because Chiron is half an animal and half a human, so there is a duality to it. It somehow shows the instinct as well as the consciousness at the same time. Obviously, the animal side is kind of like a beast, right? And then the humanitarian side of things is more of the divine representation. So, because it's a duality, it represents the friction of having an animal body driven by survival instincts, but with a human mind being capable of complex consciousness. So what happens is that we tend to reject our animalistic side. That's the society. We reject our instinctual nature because we are told to repress our primal urges, our bodily rhythms, our raw survival instincts, because we want to kind of be more civilized. And, Taurus is the most physical, sensory sign of the zodiac. So with Chiron here, the wound is a deep shame or a rejection of that basic animal needs, such as hunger, rest, sexuality. Often sexuality is associated with other signs, but Taurus is kind of like the sign of masturbation because it's a self-pleasury type of sign, right? So being ashamed of that. So having Chiron in the sign of Taurus requires us to stop treating our animalistic side, our animalistic body, kind of like as an enemy that needs to be controlled, and start treating it as more of a sacred partner of yours, really. Also remember that the exalted ruler of Taurus is the moon. And the moon is the mother archetype. So this could really talk to us about, for example, obviously when we are thinking about aging or we are thinking about menstruation cycles, all those are connected with Taurus to a certain extent. So it's kind of like the rejection of menstruation cycles, prolonging, for example, the menopause periods. And I can imagine tablets being discovered for that and all this type of stuff. Taurus, because it represents Earth, so it is it's very much connected to fertility. So also the moon is something to do with the stress level, or it is the representation of motherhood. So we will see whether there is going to be something to do with birthrights. Aries represents birthrights. And if you think back, if I'm not mistaken, with Chiron in the sign of Aries, China actually did something connected to birthright. But correct me if I'm wrong, I might be wrong on that. Might have been earlier. But I can imagine something kind of like widespreading a little bit more with Chiron in the sign of Taurus. But also, if Moon is the exalted ruler of Taurus, so that's a nurturing planet, but it is a little bit more about conditional nurturing. Now, you need to know the story. With Chiron, Chiron was ugly. So his parents kind of threw him away, and then he was raised by Apollo and Pallas Athena instead of the parents. So that's where the rejection element comes from. So, and then obviously when you are rejected, and then let's say you are with your foster parents, you might feel like that it's a conditional nurturing. I have to be a good boy in order for me to be loved. So that feeling of maternal love or safety that is very much tied to that kind of tangible matrix of this sign, like how well behaved I am, or how much I have achieved, how good a son I am, or how good a child I am, and so forth. How well am I going to be able to fit into the society or the family's material structure? Often this is about most likely the realization that, let's say, a mother who passed down her unhealed financial and bodily anxieties. What happens is that the child absorbs those somatic messages and it kind of gets translated in our brain. The world is not safe, resources are scarce, we must constantly protect ourselves. And Taurus is about protection. So protecting what we have, protecting our loved ones, or in the sign of Aries, it was about protecting the self. Now it gets a little bit extended to protecting more around as well. So my predictions connected to that is, I think there is going to be potentially some changes connected to pregnancy, conception, or something to do with aging, or these bodily machines, and then you don't have to go to the gym, and then you just get hooked up on a 20-minute machine, and then the body transformation starts on you in your bedroom type of things. And I think we are going to be seeing these more and more. But also, Chiron in the sign of Taurus is about the wound of conception. So there could be wounds around reproductive system. This includes struggles with fertility, or the depression that comes with being pregnant, whether it's hormonal. I mean, Taurus is a very hormonal sign, by the way, because it's a lunar type of sign. So we will see, but it feels like more and more people will choose not to give birth. That's how I'm seeing Chiron. And then we will see this in more and more countries. Again, the collective shift here is that, in Aries, that those reproductive conversations kind of were a major political battlefield, right? there has been arguments over autonomy, laws, and then LGBTQ and all these type of topics I'm referring to. And then the other party is fighting for their own rights and aggressive debates over who owns my body. That's also a very classic Aries war, because Aries represents independence. So in Taurus, this conversation shifts to that physical or material reality of bringing life into the world. So maybe it's going to be about the lack of maternal health care that is happening right now, or the cost of giving birth, or the lack of parental leave, or maybe they are going to be changing the law. I mean, I know in Hungary it's 3 years, 2 to 3 years that you can stay at home with your kids. Leading psychologists confirm that a baby needs the first 3 years their mom to be with them. But I remember in England, this was 9 months when I worked there in HR, and then I think you can extend it up to 12 months. Astrologically speaking, that's not enough time, because the first 18 months of your life is ruled by Aries, which is very much about entitlement. So I'm entitled to have a mommy around. As soon as a toddler, as soon as a baby, I'm crying, you're gonna have to come and then feed me or hug me or whatever that little baby wants. So I can imagine there is going to be changing around that. Or unfortunately, I can even imagine that there's going to be a lot more abandonment of mothers or children after the child is born. I hope that this is not going to be the case. Chiron also represents herbology, and it is kind of like a medical type of asteroid. So I really hope that we are going to be seeing major changes in modern pharmacology, and maybe people are going to go back to the roots, and then using a lot more herbs, and maybe a lot more education is going to be provided on social media about those type of things. The story with Chiron is that he accidentally poisoned himself. He could never heal himself, but Zeus, the god of all gods, made him kind of like a medical expert. Very briefly, that's the story there. And he had the ability to heal others, but he was not able to heal himself. So that's the reason why I'm kind of thinking that this could be a case. And we need to understand that the body, and this is a lesson of Chiron in the sign of Taurus, the body is a self-healing machine. And maybe the teaching is going to be that we don't need to be numbing the physical body with all these tablets and artificial things and so forth. So I'm hoping that we are going to go back to the very basic type of medicine, such as herbology, or even food-connected things as well. And it might become more deeply grounded, a practical reality. Taurus rules the plant kingdom, the soil. So I can even imagine that people are going to start growing their own vegetables in the garden more and more. Chiron in the sign of Aries is a little bit more about surgery, the acute trauma care, adrenaline management, kind of like fighting the disease itself, like trying to come up with solutions for cancer and all those type of stuff. Chiron in the sign of Taurus is a little bit more about the maintenance. Taurus is about a little bit more about longevity, tissue repair, nutrition, the endocrine system, and kind of like the steady recovery. Chiron in Aries can really talk to us about injuries and inflammation and burnout and high fevers and kind of like aggressive overtreatments. While Taurus is a little bit more about stagnation, vocal and throat issues, thyroid imbalances, and how dependent we are on the pharmaceutical companies. Chiron in Aries, the treatment style is very much about cut it out or fight it. So it's very direct, very immediate. If you don't take this pill, you're gonna die. I was told this actually back in 2020 when I had my surgeries. The anesthesiologist was screaming at me because because I had a very high blood pressure, 220 per something, and then she was hesitating whether to operate me or not. And then she gave me the pills every hour, and then it went down, but really slightly. My operation was scheduled for 11 a.m. and then I got operated at 7 p.m. instead. So you can imagine. And then she was screaming at me, calm the F down. This is the language at a private hospital that I was talked to. And eventually she said around 6 p.m., you know what, we're going to operate you because if we don't operate you, you're going to die anyway. So just sign the paper that you are aware of the possibility of staying on the op bed. It's like, oh, thanks. Now I'm worried. So that's the type of Chiron in Aries type of style. Chiron in the Taurus should be about nourishing that physical body. It's a slow, systematic, kind of herbal, dietary, kind of like somatic therapies. And hopefully we are going to be seeing that. But I think it's going to be about the awakening that the food is a medicine, the nutritional healing, the health of the guts are super important. So let's see how that rules. Of course, because Taurus also represents the major financial systems. So Chiron can be exposing these deep wounds within the corporate medicine and the pharmaceutical industries. So maybe news around, medicine being treated purely as kind of like a profit-driven commodity rather than looking into the human rights. However, I do know that many of the pharmaceutical companies are in debt. But I can imagine a mass movement towards decentralized medicine. And like I said, people learning to grow their own basic medicinal herbs, like, I don't know, using calendula, chamomile, or elderberry, and all this type of stuff. Let's see how that goes. Imagine Chiron kind of like as a prescription right now from a medical point of view. Of course, one of the biggest meanings of Taurus is finances. So we might be seeing, unfortunately, economical crisis situations. I have to mention that, especially if we started seeing that with Chiron in the sign of Aries. Those were just the pre-shadow periods. So we're going to see that, unfortunately. And Taurus is also the representation of kind of comfort, luxury that is felt physically, like comfortable furniture or, these sheets or a perfectly heated room. It rules the biological urge to relax or seek physical pleasure. So, and because Chiron is kind of like a negative energy, so it can feel like that it got taken away from me. So I cannot afford anymore to switch on the air conditioning, for example, as much as I would like to. Okay? So, like I said, from an anatomy point of view, Taurus represents the throat and the neck area, so the vocal cords and all those type of stuff, that we use for singing and public speaking and stuff like that. And I can imagine that people might start feeling that they are kind of voiced down a little bit. And it's like a censorship, really. And of course, I've spoken about the agriculture, the food, and the food supply chain. While Virgo is the representation of micromanagement of your daily diet and health, Taurus is a little bit more about the macro management, the macro abundance of food production and farming. So, historically speaking, wealth was measured in cattle. That actually the root of the word capital comes from the Latin caput, and caput means the head of the cattle. So this is why Taurus is connected to finances, for example. So we will see how that goes. But Taurus can also represent the harvesting element as well. So maybe something to do with the fertilizer, or even it can represent vineyards. And so from an investment point of view, wine could be actually something that might start getting more and more expensive, for example. But Taurus can also represent the culinary arts as well. Cooking is not just for survival, but it's for pleasure also. So maybe the culinary industries are going to struggle, or it's going to be blooming even further. Okay? But Taurus is very famous for preservation. It's a fixed sign. So it's about conservation as well as preservation as well at the same time. And Taurus is big on routines as well. I know you might think that Virgo is connected to routine, but it's never just one sign that is connected to it, okay? All earth signs are connected to routines, finances, and habits as well at the same time. And Taurus is a little bit more about the comfort of doing the exact same thing every single day. It's kind of like the pathway that we build towards Virgo, who is going to be repeating the same stuff all the way. And Taurus is connected to stubbornness and stagnation. So if we are refusing to move or change directions once a decision has been made, then this could show that it's going to end up as a kind of like a struggle, you know, or it's an external pressure, and then we are trying to kind of like resist that. So my idea here is that like the learning curve is that we don't need to resist the change. How can we turn that change around for our own benefit? But even Taurus represents art as well, especially like pottery or sculptures. So that might be something that is going to be more and more important. Taurus is about building materials, so I think the cost of building materials are going to be quite high. So think about the bricks, the mortar, the timber used to build, you know, the physical structure of things. So that might become quite expensive. But also Taurus represents textiles and any tools that we need for the fashion design or the actual production of clothing or jewelry making. So I wouldn't be shocked if those became or have become more, will have become more expensive in the next 7 years. Now, okay, so I'm gonna just stop for 2 seconds because I'm curious what you guys are saying. Really grateful you are speaking on this. This is so important that we are speaking on this. We must speak about this. Okay, turning 49 on Tuesday. Oh, happy birthday. This topic is reminding me of the Wicked Story movie. Yes. Hi, Olivia. Okay, so like I said, I wanted to talk a little bit about this transition because the signs are built on each other. So Taurus is built on Aries. So if Aries is something to do with like the way I define myself, right? Then in Taurus I have to be building on that. Aries is the spark of life, kind of like the initial big bang. Okay, the declaration of our individual existence. Aries answers the question, who the heck I am. Okay, now Taurus takes that very raw, formless energy and asks, now what am I going to do with it? How am I going to sustain it? Okay, so these are how they are built on each other. So if Aries is the moment of conception, we have got a single sperm piercing the egg, you know, an aggressive fast, kind of like singular act of willpower, as well as the baby's survival. So Aries defines the DNA blueprint of that new identity. And the Taurus build is, you know, Taurus is kind of like the 9 month of pregnancy that follow. So once the identity is defined in Aries, it needs that safe womb. Mommy needs to eat, you know, steady nutrients. And then the physical tissue is built to kind of form a body. So Taurus takes that concept of the person and gives it the flesh, the bone, So what I'm trying to say is without Aries, there is no spark to grow. Without Taurus, the spark burns out instantly in the cold. So I hope that makes sense, from how you need to be transitioning from who I am to what I value. Okay. So, in Aries, you discover the boundaries by colliding with the world. You learn about your own strength, your anger, your desires, even your unique ego. It's kind of like you are claiming the right to occupy space. So Taurus is going to build on that. You know who you are. So then I'm going to be calculating my self-worth. If Aries says, let's say I'm a writer, Taurus says, great. Now let's buy a high quality desk, charge what we are worth for, and then protect our writing hours. So Taurus takes that confidence of Aries and solidifies into a actual self-esteem or financial security. So now I've given you a bit of a hubris here, right? So let me simplify it for you. If with Chiron in Aries, you didn't have the self-esteem to resign from a job, trust me, with Chiron in the sign of Taurus, it's going to become a hell. And it's going to be even more difficult for you to build up something, because you should have started the building process already in the sign of Aries. Now, Aries is like the adrenaline. It's like the motivation to get out of bed and then, let's say, hit the gym. Taurus is about endurance. So Aries runs at a pure adrenaline and cortisol as well. Aries is kind of like designed for sprinting and fighting and initiating. But you cannot live in a constant state of fight or flight without blowing out your nervous system. So Taurus comes into the picture and the nervous system turning on to save Aries from exhaustion. So Taurus is going to teach you that you cannot run a marathon without a proper training. That's the role of Aries. And what happens when there is when the chain breaks? Because it's a transition from Aries to Taurus, so the chain is going to break. So it exposes the exact moment where this building process got disrupted. And that's exactly what the next 1 year is about. Because Taurus will be moving into the sign, Chiron will be moving into the sign of Taurus on June 19th, and it's going to remain there for approximately about 3-4 months. And then it's going to go back into the sign of Aries until about February, the beginning of next year. And then it's going to remain in the sign of Taurus for about 7 years. So this is the reason why this is the most single important video right now for you in 2026, because we are in a preparation period. And you still have got time to do something about Chiron in the sign of Aries, even though it has moved into the sign of Taurus in a week time, okay? So imagine that you are someone who is trying to build a financial security, that's Taurus, but you are working yourself to the bone. You are holding money and buying, real estate. But because the Aries foundation was wounded, you don't feel safe existing. No amount of Taurus assets will ever make you feel secure. Trust me on that. You are trying to build a brick house on a foundation of kind of like a shifting sand. So that's why Chiron is going to be shifting in and out, so that you are fixing up that shifting sand. So I hope that makes sense. I mean, with Aries, actually, we have to be fixing the foundation. We have to heal the right to exist. We have to be able to say no and kind of screw you. Sorry for my French. And that it's the feeling that you can have the right to have a desire. And then in Taurus, if you have got to seek your identity, then you realize I don't need to fight anymore. I can drop the weapons. I can pick up the tools and I can start planting the garden. Because you convert your healed personal raw power, and that's Aries, into intangible assets, physical health, unshakable self-worth. If you are not fixing those, then you are actually going to be fighting even more with Chiron in the sign of Taurus. So I want to give you a kind of like a better kind of like example so that you can understand. Imagine that, with the Aries root, let's say you are a corporate employee. Many of us work for others, right? So why not? And imagine that you enter a career path that never takes that Aries risk to assert your true boundaries, or you never ask for a promotion, or you never pitch your unique kind of innovative ideas. And out of fear of conflict, you play small, and then you kind of blend in the background. Why? Because you're afraid of getting fired. Then 10 years later, this lack of self-assertion solidifies into a physical reality. And maybe you are getting fired, or you find yourself stuck in kind of like this low-paying, kind of soul-crushing job with massive financial obligations, such as I have to pay the mortgage, I've got car payments, I've got kids to raise. So you are physically trapped because you didn't use your Aries fire early on to forge your own independent path. And the struggle with bills is simply the physical form of your unexpressed personal power. So I'm seeing Chiron in the sign of Aries as kind of like the corporate hostage scenario. Maybe you have got a brilliant business concept. That could be a great example as well. Then Aries demands that you don't just launch it like imperfectly or raw or aggressively. Instead, the wound Aries gets terrified of failure, and then you might never hit the publish button. You never sell something. You never put your name on the line. So what does Taurus bring you then? It's going to bring you drain on your bank account. And you spend thousands of dollars on, I don't know, certifications and software and courses, because Taurus is hoarding. So you're going to buy 10 courses, but you never kind of use them in your own life. And you end up with zero incoming cash flow. So that leads to a financial struggle. And maybe you want to be launching something at the very last moment when your bank account is near to zero. But that might be a little bit too late. The other scenario actually I can imagine is because the Aries could be about the failure to defend our boundaries. And the Taurus is the declaration of, no, don't touch it, this is mine. So if you have got a weak Aries in your chart and you cannot handle confrontation, and you let partners, family members, or kind of friends or bosses overstep boundaries, or people are just taking their time, or they are just dictating the terms of, I don't know, relationships or, contracts without ever fighting back, then how is that going to manifest in the sign of Taurus? Because there is a lack of boundary defense, materializes again as a financial burden. And then maybe it's a codependency scenario that I have to be depending, or I have to be supporting a toxic partner. I keep signing bad contracts. I keep taking on even more debts. And it's kind of like you're taking on something that is not even yours. It has got an origin. And often we just do that because I'm lacking confrontational skills. So I just want to keep the peace. So what's the healing kind of pivot of Chiron in the sign of Taurus? Take an independent risk. Do something without asking for permission from others. Set really hard boundaries. Say no, to whoever or whatever is trying to drain your resources. And even though it kind of creates some temporary arguments, and make sure that you declare your value and stop hiding your skills. Force the world to see them, to see you as a irreplaceable individual. And then this should be a magical time for everyone. But it could be, even in a relationship scenario, kind of like Aries is like the beginning of the relationship. So at the beginning of the relationship, if you fail to voice your preferences, or I don't know, you are not allowed to do your hobbies, or you kind of park your distinct identity out of fear of rejection. Basically, what you do is you suppress your Aries fire, again, to keep the peace. How is that going to manifest in the sign of Taurus? Especially once you have built a life together and we share a house, a mortgage, even a certain type of daily routines, but because the relationship was built on an invisible foundation, and there's the missing Aries self, things can feel like a golden cage, or things are going to start falling apart, and then you are going to get controlled. And it kind of becomes a suffocating relationship. We stay because splitting up the physical asset is too daunting and too difficult, and I might lose it, so I get stuck in it. Now, I don't want to give you, more scenarios, but Chiron in the sign of Taurus can represent our numbed senses as well. Aries is the primary sense. It's kind of like your instinctual libido. It's a passionate conflict as well. It's healthy but passionate conflicts. And then with Taurus, it could be something desexualized, just purely a functional partnership, because I don't know, we've got family together and so on. So remember that Aries fire needs to be injected into that Taurus container. So Aries is going to give you the spark, and then Taurus creates a container. So in a relationship, it's just, very important that you reclaim a separate life and you go out alone and, I don't know, pick up an independent hobby and all those type of stuff. And having to have those kind of dangerous conversations as well. So let me ask if anyone has got a question before we move into the 12th sign. A very old pottery place is closing down in UK. 600 job lost. Mentioning since you mentioned pottery. Oh, very interesting. Do you think that Uranus transit in Taurus prepared us for Chiron in Taurus? Absolutely. This is actually something that I wanted to mention. I tend to see Chiron's entry into signs more of a manifestation than Uranus. I think just Uranus shakes things up and then kind of causes the turmoils. And then we've got, and then we've got Chiron, which is coming around and really exposes the trouble there. Nobody chooses anything. I laugh at astrologers who tell people to start something now, unless the planetary energies tell you to do something you cannot. We are prisoners of the program. I don't think you are prisoners of the program. If you are wired that way, then I think your way of thinking, unfortunately, might need to be. And that's actually a good comment, because Taurus represents our self-perception. Taurus represents our value system and the way we are coded to think. So if you think that you are you are a prisoner of the program, then I think the lesson for you is having to kind of like rewrite those concepts. Thanks a lot for your work. I must admit that I love your teaching skills, written tests, impressive horror story about your surgery. I'll have my Chiron written in my first house. Brilliant. No, it is definitely a powerful word that people are embracing more. I just want to comment a little bit on that, because, I tend to see that a lot of us are often crying, but we are not doing enough to make changes in our lives. And I think the entitlement with Chiron in the sign of Aries has grown significantly, but it has grown in the wrong way. So I think it's like I'm entitled to have, I don't know, I'm entitled to get the best service ever at the shops. But we didn't recognize that I am entitled to get out there and make a better life for myself. And then we just complain about governments, and we complain about, I don't know, the car dealership shop and all these type of things, rather than kind of like trying to do something for ourselves. I hope that makes sense what I'm trying to say with that. So hopefully no one gets rubbed in the wrong way, but I tend to be crying as well. So I'm not telling you how to suck an egg, because I might have got the tendency to do the same. But what if we just realized our skills? And with Pluto in Aquarius, we are crying now about AI taking over our jobs and so forth, but how many of us actually went out there and then start learning about AI and maybe take a course? Just a silly example, right? Because we know that that's going to be the future. Okay, so I'm going to start breaking this down for the 12 signs, but I'm going to put you now on 2 minutes breaks. I'm just going to shoot in an ad here so that I can refill my cup and then I can have a sip of water. So see you in 2 minutes. I am back. Can you guys hear me? Can someone just pop it into the chat box that it's all good and you can hear me? Because I learned how to insert an ad while I fill up my cups, but I'm not too sure if I am. Yes, you can hear me. So let's break this down for all 12 signs, and I'm going to be exactly doing the same way, okay? So I'm going to be looking at the transition, and I'm going to talk to you about the Aries traps, and I'm going to talk to you about a little bit like the fix. So we're going to start with Taurus rising sign. So because of course it happens in the sign of Taurus, so why would we not start with Taurus rising sign? So what does it mean? Aries occupies your 12th house and the Taurus rising sign is going to be your first house. Often I get this question, what astrology I do? I do Western astrology and I use whole sign house system in case someone is wondering. But whoever is making videos on YouTube, they are always going to be using whole sign house system. That's kind of like let's call it as a general rule, okay? So 12th house is the realm of the subconscious, but also represents your nervous system, your sleep, your isolation, and the things that are kind of like hidden or undone. You can think of it as the cosmic womb before you are born into the first house of that physical body. So if the Taurus rising didn't learn the 12th house Aries lessons, which is aggressive, unapologetic defense of your right to exist, or unplug, rest, to kind of calm your nervous system. This is the unexpressed boundary fire that doesn't stay hidden. So it crashes directly forward, crashes into your physical body, basically. So it starts materializing as a literal kind of dense physical illness, stubborn stagnation, bodily burnout. So let me give you a scenario, because this could really talk to you about chronic burnout, actually. So there is a leak here in the 12th house, okay? So the leak is that you feel this raging pressure to disconnect from your demanding job or even family. Because in the 12th house, we dissolve, we let go of something. But because Aries is hidden in your 12th house, you swallow that anger and you think, I have to keep pushing. I have to be the reliable one. And then you run on that pure kind of invisible adrenaline, which you think it's there. So let's say you refuse to take a day off, or you do not set boundaries around your sleep and so forth. So what's going to be the manifestation in the first house? Because Taurus rules the throat, the jaw, the thyroid, even the metabolism to a certain extent. The body steps in to do what the mind wouldn't, or the mind wasn't able to. Because the 12th house is a little bit about the mind as well. All the Caden houses are connected to the mind. So that suppressed 12th house stress crashes into that physical first house, the body, and then let's say we're going to be experiencing thyroid disorder, okay? Now, it doesn't have to be thyroid disorder because it's highly dependent on where your Venus is. So I cannot necessarily comment on that. But I don't know, you might be experiencing jaw clenching. Because what happens is that the physical, throat kind of locks up and says, if you won't use your 12th house Aries fire to build a boundary for rest, I will physically paralyze you in the first house. So you have no choice but to stop, if that makes sense. Or 12th house Aries also can be when you are failing to fight off those subconscious drains, like the psychic drains, the emotional intruders. So the Taurus manifestation would be, Taurus rules the storage. So to protect that sensitive, kind of overwhelmed nervous system, the first house begins to build like a physical buffer. So therefore you can start putting on weight. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. And the body holds on to the weight, holds on to the fluid, and even you might go on a diet or you start exercising, but nothing really happens. Because the subconscious mind uses that Taurus first house to build a fortress from these, exercises and all those type of stuff. Or it's just going to be a lot slower than you expected. But Chiron in the first house could be about the body recomposition, okay? Or simply with the 12th house, you haven't learned to say no to people who drain you. Then these people are going to be kind of like intruding your personal space. But also the 12th house failure could be that ignoring kind of like the internal alarm system of your physical body, because the Aries is like an alarm system, right? So the alarm goes off kind of silently in the subconscious. So that could be anxiety, insomnia, racing heart as well. And if the Taurus rising sign ignored those 12 house signs, we just numbed ourselves with routine or comfort food or to keep going, then how is that going to manifest? That silent alarm system is going to start kind of like exploding. And maybe your senses are going to shut down, chronic fatigue, loss of voice, nervous collapse, kind of like your body refuses to move. Like I said, Taurus rules the five senses. So the unhealed 12th house stress kind of can rob you of the ability to enjoy pleasure. And then maybe, I don't know, food is going to taste like cardboard, or you are going to be exhausted to enjoy the touch, or even your favorite music can feel like noise. So what would be the healing there? Like, instead of waiting for your body to kind of break down, you don't need to ask for permission to lie on the couch. So you must use that raw Aries fire to aggressively schedule isolation, create a better sleep hygiene. Imagine sleep hygiene as your best bodyguard and fiercely protecting the peace of that nervous system. Like, whatever is frustrating me, I'm going to kind of cut them out of my life. So therefore, it highly depends on where Mars is in your chart, and that could be giving you more ideas about how to go about that. And then in the first house, then the body naturally relaxes, softens, and thrives. And let's say you are going to start melting the kilos, the weight of your body. Okay. Now, the first house is kind of like a little bit like decision makings. So it feels like that Chiron in the sign of Taurus is going to force you to make decisions about what you are meant to be letting go. And maybe if Mars is, for example, in your seventh house, you're going to have to let go of a relationship or a contractual agreement. Or if it's the 10th, like Mars is in your 10th house, you might have to be letting go of a job or a business idea that you have been trying to work on for many years, but it has never taken off. So I might need to be walking away from that. So let's move on to Gemini rising sign. So the transition is happening between your 11th and 12th house. So to understand how this operates, we are going to be doing exactly the same like we did with Taurus. The 12th house, the law here is that the 12th house gives that concrete, somatic, and psychological form to whatever was initiated or left unaddressed in the 12th house. So the 11th house is where you put your active fire, and the 12th house is where the energy goes to be metabolized or rested or anchored in your subconscious kind of womb. So let me give you some ideas here, how I'm imagining this. Imagine that with an Aries 11th house cusp, we are chasing every possible connection and over networking and picking battles with people or for the group, fighting for a group or fighting with others, let's say on social media. Gemini rising naturally loves data, connection, and social variety. So with the Aries 11th house, often that makes you more competitive, or it makes you very active in groups, or you form alliances as well. But you can be acting as a crusader for your friends and say yes to every, I don't know, networking event and every party and all those type of stuff. Now, because we have got Taurus in the 12th house cusp, imagine that as a psychological text for that 11th house. Overextension is kind of like paid in the currency of often mental shutdown, psychological shutdown. Or if the 11th house is something to do with your ambitions, then it's not enough just to chase a lot of ambitions. I'm going to have to start actually giving a physical form to it. So the 12th house is going to kind of force a lock on it. Maybe you are not going to be able to tolerate the sound of people talking anymore, or your throat is going to feel tight, or you are getting tired of people being around you, and somehow that is forcing you into an absolute isolation or loss of a friendship. All of a sudden, the Taurus is going to demand an environment that is more quiet, more comfortable, a little bit more silenced, because the noise of people, like, it irritates me that people are fighting around me. The 11th house is like the group thinking. So I'm wondering if many of the Gemini rising sign lost their worth to the crowd, because I impulsively align with the collective goals, the trends, the peer pressure as well. And I'm going to be jumping into any type of business alliance and, I don't know, marketing structure, or I'm part of an activist group. And because it also feels exciting and kind of like it feels urgent as well. So I'm fighting for the group's vision, but Aries is meant to be fighting for their own vision. So am I able to stand out of the crowd, or am I kind of like hiding behind the crowd? So then the 12th house manifestation could be, for example, that you are kind of getting fired out of a group without any type of warning signs, or the subconscious wound is going to be that unworthiness, or I'm feeling invisible. Taurus rules assets and worth. So when it sits in the hidden 12th house, Gemini rising secretly feels like often like a fraud, or a fear that they have no tangible value, or they don't have the knowledge, or they cannot do it alone type of things. So you can be experiencing a mysterious drain on your finances. A friend steals a business idea from you, money from you, or they run away with the money that you lend them, and so forth. And then it could even indicate certain type of irrational panic, that you are truly not secure somehow, you are not getting appreciated. I mean, the 11th house can represent pay rise, the money that comes in from your business. So maybe you're going to figure out that a coworker, an employee of yours, is somehow stealing money from you, and it has been going on forever. But maybe we didn't see that. But even the 11th house can represent on social ranking as well. So you have to learn that your value is actually somehow inherited in your private soul, not necessarily dependent on how you are ranked by others. And the 11th house is also showing you how we want how like the desire to keep the information flowing. So Gemini rising sign might swallow their raw anger when a friend or a group or a network crosses their boundaries. And then often they play this cool, kind of stay with it type of personality, and they might not be picking the fight. They might not be declaring that, but I don't agree with this group, so I'm walking away from it. So that unexpressed social anger, or stage fright, we can even call it that way, moves into the 12th house of sleep and deep subconscious. So, and that could show up as a somatized stress during sleep or rest. So while you are sleeping, all of a sudden you have to wake up in the middle of the night, or heavy neck tension, and then you cannot turn your head around when you wake up, or you're going to have these vivid nightmares about being abandoned by your tribe, your friends, or even a loss of a parent. Actually, the 11th house represents a loss of a parent, because what happens is that the body is storing the fight you refuse to have, and then it kind of becomes a fight within yourself. So the healing here requires you to actually have a fight, basically, or to cut out certain people out of your life so that you can actually rest. So for a Gemini rising sign, this Chiron in the sign of Taurus is about the creation of a peaceful mind. If you are frantic, aggressive, or chaotic with your goals or friends or networks, your subconscious mind and your physical body will pay the price by freezing up or going numb, or kind of trapping you in isolation. So you're going to have to use that 11th house Aries cusp intentionally. Be selective about who you fight for, what type of network you build, how much money you go to work for, is it worth it? And when you retreat into your 12th house sanctuary, actually you can start experiencing some true kind of like luxurious gifts of that 12th house, which is often solitude, deep sleep, spiritual security. It's about awakening of your spiritual kind of like realm, knowing that everything is kind of like connected. So Cancer rising sign, and I would love to hear about your experiences with Chiron in the sign of Aries, what that brought you, for example, in the 11th house, in the 10th house, and so forth. And then, because I want you to see how this transition is going to kind of work for you. So for a Cancer rising sign, this is happening at the very most public houses of all. You know, it's the peak of your chart. So moving from the 10th house to the 11th house. So the 10th house is where you are meant to be kind of like a authority figure. It's about an independent work, independent career. It's about that fierce pioneering spirit that I'm going to be fighting back with people who are trying to knock me over, for example, in the corporate world and so forth. It's about learning that you have to claim your crown, or you have to fight your battles out in the open. 10th house is very open. So when that unexpressed fire crashes into your communities, your network, and your long-term income, that can become a block there. So let me give you a couple of ideas. I mean, Cancer risings, have got the reputation of being very soft, but the career house demands Aries fire. So it wants you to be a boss, a leader. And Cancer rising sign chooses to take care of their kids, for example, or to take care of their family, because they are the natural like nurturers of the zodiacal signs. So the bottom line is that Chiron was trying to teach that you are meant to be a boss, you are meant to be a disruptor, you are meant to be an independent entrepreneur. You are meant to be someone who starts things. Now, if you as a Cancer rising shrinks back out of the desire for safety, because often Cancer is very safety-minded, lets others take credit for their work, or refuses to pick the fight, the professional fight, and I'm not talking about punching someone in the face, just to stand out, then basically what it means is you have failed your 10th house test. Now, the 11th house rules your gains from career. So the cash flow that comes from your public standing. So when the 10th house Aries is weak, it materializes in the 11th house as a chronic financial ceiling. So you're trying to grow your business, it's not growing at all. Or you might find yourself back stuck in associations, networks, corporate groups, and then you're kind of like out of work, like not out of workplaces. What's the word I'm looking for? Like in and out of work. So you spend 1 year here, 1 year there, and then you cannot really find what exactly you are kind of like good at, what can give you that, that I'm not hitting the financial ceiling. And or simply if you were not valued at your current workplace, then I might be changing jobs more often so that I can get valued by someone else, but that is not coming to us. So it's an awakening that because you are going to be generating income if you are able to become an entrepreneur. So you have to be looking around in your professional circle, and you have to be seeing whether you are feeling truly supported by that, or it feels like it's going to lead to certain type of a cash flow stagnation. Of course, the 11th house is something to do with your friends and alliances as well. But again, that started in the 10th house. So swallowing anger toward bosses or authority figures or government, or faking certain type of compliance, because when a Cancer rising faces a toxic boss or an unfair workplace, and most likely many of you Cancer rising sign have been in a toxic work environment. I guess that, okay? Or even it could be a parent figure who tries to dominate you. Then Chiron was teaching you that you have to cut ties, and you're going to have to draw a fierce line with them. But if you suppress that rage to keep that public image pristine, then the anger has nowhere to go. So it's going to move into the 11th house. So it's going to move into your friendships and the community that you are part of. And therefore, it could lead to power struggles or heavy stagnation within your social circle. And you might be finding yourself surrounded by these inflexible friends who drain your resources, or they become completely defensive or close themselves off from you. We know that Taurus is very stubborn, right? So it's kind of like an immovable wall in your 11th house. So that's why the salary is not moving anywhere. Certain type of unfair treatments with work, unfair friends. So you have to be still using that Aries fire to clear out kind of like the bad actors in the 10th house. And that might be your boss, that might be a parent of yours, even it could be a friend as well. You know, the other example that comes to my mind is that we are blindly chasing status. So overworking to prove that you are someone. That's also Chiron in Aries in the 10th house. Because Aries can be very motivated. So how that might be, because you might be feeling like that if you're not treating your career like, you know, like a sanctuary, that I'm going to end up being fired. So because Cancer is very conscious about the safety of their house, the safety of their kids, family members, and so forth. And then you just allow the boss to talk to you like like a piece of no one. So you are ignoring the fighting, the competing, kind of like the sprinting from one professional crisis to the next. And in the 11th house, which is the house of hopes, wishes, and long-term vision, so you kind of feel like that I've lost my purpose. And you feel numb and physically exhausted because your nervous system is going to shut down a little bit. And you don't know how to dream anymore. You don't know how to enjoy success. Even you might have got the title, you might have got the status, but you cannot just enjoy the physical fruit of the labor because you kind of burnt out the engine to get there. So the healing for you, Cancer, is that you cannot just wait for a group or a network to make you feel safe or valued. You have to go into the public eye. You have to kind of dig down your flag and then telling people that I'm here, I'm a boss. And when you have got Cancer as like the courage to say, this is my business, this is my direction, I'm running the show, then the universe is going to start responding by solidifying that raw power into a steady, luxurious, long-term wealth. So I'm going to stop here for a second, and I'm curious to see if someone wants to or made a comment. I can hear you very well. You succeed to put my brain on remembering 80 all the moments my sun in Aries got provocated. Okay. This is one of the best live ever seen on YouTube. Thank you so much, Victor. Oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much. So let's move on to, who are we on? Leo rising sign. So the shift is happening between your 9th and 10th house. Sorry about it. It's a little bit of a longer video, like I said at the beginning, but I didn't want to be just kind of like giving you a half-ass material, because I truly believe that this is one of the most important transition right now in the sky. So it deserves a lot of talk. And I was even thinking to make another kind of like talk about this next week, because there's a lot to talk about with Chiron. But I'm just trying to be a little bit time conscious. Anyway, Leo rising sign. So the shift is happening between your 9th house to the 10th house. So there could have been a leak in your 9th house. Oh, and by the way, what I wanted to say is that you might have used your let's say Leo rising sign might have used the ninth house Aries, not as a league, but as an advantage. Let's say you studied something and so forth. So that's why I was wondering to make another video and then just kind of look at Chiron in a positive lens as well for the 12 signs. Because then if you used, let's say, Leo rising sign, your ninth house Aries in a very positive way, then Chiron is going to start bringing the results in the 10th house. Trust me on that. But we are talking, like I said at the beginning of the video, we are more on the negative side today because most of us are not using Chiron well. So that's why we have to do that. But if you failed to claim your own expertise, or you abandoned your true vision out of fear because, oh, I don't have the knowledge or all this type of stuff, then we're going to have a problem in the 10th house. So Leo rising sign is meant to be independent, bold, and pioneering, right? And the 9th house, Aries, demands you to say, listen, this is my truth. This is my unique perspective. I'm going to teach it. I'm going to share it with the world. That's what you are meant to be doing with your 9th house. Every single Leo rising sign, regardless of whether you have a planet or where your ruler is. But if a Leo rising shrinks back, thinks they are unqualified enough, get stuck in that loop of collecting endless degrees or certifications without ever fiercely stepping out as an authority, then you have failed your 9th house test. So the 10th house manifestation is going to be that lack of physical courage is going to manifest as a literal kind of like physical glass ceiling in your career. So you're not going to get promoted, for example. You're going to get stuck in a job or a professional role that feels very rigid, very stagnant, even underpaid. And you want a thriving, stable, and lucrative business, surely, because it's Taurus. But instead, you experience kind of like the constant financial worry, or you are feeling trapped by your professional obligations. Let me give you an example even further, which I haven't spoken about with the rest of the signs, and that's another reason why I'm thinking to make another video. But remember, Pluto and Chiron will be in square. So imagine that you have got, for example, for Leo, we have got Pluto in the 7th house. So because let's say daddy brings the money home, daddy wants me to run the household, and with Chiron in the 9th house, I was meant to be learning something. I was meant to be kind of like coming up with a vision. And then in the 10th house, that would be about the materialization of that career dream that I created in the last 7 years. But imagine that Pluto in your 7th house says, oh no, I'm the daddy, I'm making enough money, you don't need to work, just cook dinner, look after the kids, or whatever it is. Because the 10th house is also parenting house. So it means that you are killing your Leo rising sign, which wants to be bold and it wants to be visible, it wants to be out there in the world. So how do you think it's going to manifest later on? Well, what happens if you get divorced, for example, with the Pluto and Chiron square? Then you have nothing to fall back on. So this year is about for you to learn, to study, to have a vision, and then you have to be able to put that on a central stage so that it can become a lucrative business. You might be actually experiencing some constant financial worries as well, or you are feeling just trapped in your professional obligations. But this is going to be about you building a stable career. That's surely. I mean, it could be a bit of a golden cage type of professional persona as well, where you kind of refuse to study and you just put yourself in a box that, yeah, that's my path. That because the 10th house is the plans of the gods with us. Okay, it's kind of like our public identity, yes, but it is also what we were born to achieve, the type of tasks that we have received from our gods, if we believe in those. And so if you swallow your true belief to fit in, because we have got now an unexpressed 9th house, that fire crashes into your 10th house and it leads to that suffocating kind of professional prison. And maybe you're going to end up saying, I'm too old now to get out of this workplace, or all this type of stuff. Obviously, you are in a career potentially that looks secure, stable, or even we might look like wealthy from the outside, but things can start feeling like hollow, because it's like you are sharing your reputation. You are terrified to change directions. You are terrified to speak your mind because you are locked into that physical asset of the 10th house, the title, the mortgage, something that the career provides you. On the flip side, the 9th house Aries goes into overdrive as well. And Leo rising treats life like a relentless type of crusade, kind of to prove that I'm right. So it's like burning a massive amount of energy, fighting ideological wars online, or chasing every new big idea, or sprinting from one intellectual project to the next, but without anchoring them down. So again, what does the 10th house do? It is kind of like a total loss of professional stamina, basically. So the healing for you, Leo, is that you have to stop waiting for permission. You have to stop actually looking for another certification or a green light from the universe or even the institution. It's about launching your vision now. It might be imperfect, it might be raw, it might be just the beginning, but we're going to have to start doing that. And you're going to have to be able to speak your absolute truth as well, because the 9th house is truth. So you don't need to agree with everyone, even if it disrupts kind of like the current landscape, for example, at work. And it's about anchoring your belief as well. You can trust your unique insight. You've got the right knowledge. You're only going to be attracting the people who need your current level of knowledge anyway. It might not be the greatest, but you are attracting those people for a reason. So Leo rising, you have to have the courage to boldly stand behind your unique philosophy, and the 10th house becomes a container there, and it's going to solidify your raw vision into kind of like this rock solid foundation of respect. Let's move on to Virgo rising sign. So the shift is happening between 8th and 9th house. And, the 8th house is when you are having to aggressively confront your deepest psychological taboos. It's about financial independence in partnership as well, or courageously cutting through the codependency issues. So if you fail to claim that personal power, then it materializes as a heavy kind of bottleneck in your worldview. And it prevents you from expanding or traveling or even teaching your truth. So, because the 8th house often paralyzes us. So let's pick the topic of financial power, right? Or let's pick the topic of avoiding the uncomfortable truth about money, or letting the partner dominate the shared resources, and the partner is calling the shots somehow over money. Then what happens here is, Virgo rising sign has to learn to say that I own my power, I negotiate my worth, I'm financially dependent, or I approve of what I do with my finances. But if a Virgo rising kind of cowers away from uncomfortable financial realities, signing, I don't know, bad contracts to avoid conflicts, or keep going back to, I don't know, mortgages or loans and, all these type of things, or you are even hiding away from your deepest psychological fears, you have failed your 8th house test in the last 8 years. So the 9th house rules what? Education, publishing, expansion. So when that 8th house test is failed, it materializes in the 9th house as a financial barrier to expansion. So you might find yourself completely unable to afford, I don't know, a course, an international travel that you crave, going on holiday, even relocating, or being stuck in the loop of like paying for endless courses because Taurus accumulation, right? So because you secretly don't feel qualified or safe enough to step out and actually teach or publish your own work. It's a little bit like a dogmatic mental prison. It's a rigid belief system, but that is like a protection shield, though, because in the eighth house you have got that raw psychological anger. You have got a trauma. It's like Virgo rising sign often pretends that they are fine when they are betrayed, cheated on, or kind of being overlooked, maybe at work and stuff like that. And or a Virgo rising sign often goes through a lot of losses in their lives, psychological crisis situations. But Aries is about purging with the eighth house. It's about cutting out those karmic ties to regenerate. It's the ultimate phoenix bird there. So if you suppress that raw like anger to stay polite, then it moves into your ninth house, and then you are going to be experiencing an unyielding belief system. And you can get stubborn with your worldviews just to protect yourself from ever being hurt or vulnerable again. So imagine that you are being cheated on with the eighth house, which can actually represent those type of things, or even it can represent a divorce. Second eighth house is connected to divorce. So you go through a divorce, you can have that rigid belief system that, yeah, I'm not going to get married ever again. I'm just going to be a spinster. I'm going to be, being forever alone. So you are clinging to a specific philosophy, a strict rule, an ideological system that becomes a fortress for you because you think that that's going to be your own truth. But it's more of a physicalized mental defense mechanism you are building because you haven't faced an unhealed eighth house kind of shadow or trauma, and that is just locked up in the basement. Or, the eighth house is also about crisis situations as well. Like we are constantly fighting in partnership, or it's kind of like the adrenaline of getting used to or getting involved in emotional emergencies and all this type of stuff. Aries on the eighth house cusp. It's like metaphorically you are wrestling demons 24/7. So how is that going to be manifesting in the ninth house? Well, it's going to be about loss of faith, mental exhaustion. The brain simply goes numb, really, and we lose our optimism, and then we can no longer find meaning in life, and your mind feels like it's kind of like clouded, or it becomes a little bit sluggish. So you can experience like heavy brain fog. You can even neck stiffness you can experience, or you might be like, oh Jesus, I cannot absorb new information anymore. I don't know what to believe. It's because your internal psychological processor kind of like burnt out. So the healing here for you is claiming financial sovereignty. It's about confronting the shadow directly, and it's about trusting that transformation and change is actually super good in our life. And when you have got the courage to look your deepest fears in the eye and say, you know what, I'm stronger than you, inner saboteur, then the ninth house container actually opens up for you. And that survival, kind of like rigid shield of like survival mindset, is going to turn into a fertile, abundant, like wisdom or opportunity or kind of spiritual wealth that should be bringing you tangible results. Okay, I'm curious if anyone is saying back. I will be going back and re-listen to this video multiple times. Thank you so much, Victor, for the live video. Love your astrology videos. I'm Leo, Sun, Rising, and Venus. You can listen to this from your Sun or even Moon perspective as well. The Moon, surely, I would recommend because Taurus exalted ruler is the Moon. So you might be experiencing that you get a little bit better results from your Moon sign, by the way. With Chiron in Aries, I got out of my job after 20 years of experience exactly like a fraud, although the cause came from a misunderstanding with a colleague. Yeah, I mean, Taurus is about a fight, so it could be happening. Hi, Isaac. Thank you. I earned my diploma in data when Chiron was in my ninth house. I'm trying to build a career. However, it's becoming difficult to take off. I'm looking forward to being recognized for my abilities. Good luck on that. It should be, Chiron in Taurus could be good for it. It's often about rolling up the sleeves and then going for it. Okay, let's move on to Libra rising sign. We've got 6 more signs to cover, or 7. But the transition happens from your 7th to the 8th house. So, question, did you pick the right partner? Did you state your terms in that partnership? Do you have the courage to engage in healthy, passionate confrontation in those partnerships? This is not just romantic partnership. But if you fail to claim your independent voice in these one-on-one connections, that unexpressed fire crashes into your 8th house, the house of shared assets, investments, deep psychological well-being, and so forth. So imagine that you have been together with someone you are not in love with, but maybe they have supported you financially. I can imagine scenarios once Chiron moves into Taurus in the 8th house, they are going to be unable to support you financially anymore, because let's say the partner has lost their job, just as a scenario. But the 7th house league for you is about people pleasing, swallowing your terms to keep the partner happy, or even accommodating the red flags to kind of avoid a fight. So, because Libra rising sign seeks for harmony, but their 7th house demands that in relationships, they have to be very direct. They have to draw those sharp lines. They have to be negotiating very, very aggressively what they will do or what they won't tolerate, or what they will or won't tolerate. So if you are playing this chameleon to secure a partner, pretends everything is fine, and even when it's not, then you roll over during contract negotiations out of a discomfort with friction. So therefore you fail the 7th house test. So how is that manifesting in the 8th house? We're gonna get divorced. We're gonna have legal inheritance matters. We're gonna have, I don't know, how to split the assets, for example, during a divorce. And then the partner is gonna say that, oh yeah, of course, a client of mine is going through exactly this scenario. So that's why I'm giving you this with a Libra rising sign. And it's like everything is half on paper, but no, I put this money in, you didn't put anything, and so forth. So it becomes a little bit messy. So with Chiron in the 8th house, unfortunately, this could be becoming slightly bit even messier. This is about, with Chiron in the 8th house, it could be a literal dense financial burden, having to pay a certain bill, or you are being trapped in a bad business partnership, carrying the partner's hidden debts, losing a massive amount of money in messy divorces, legal settlements, and so forth. It's because we didn't create a boundary within that partnership. Or with Chiron in the 7th through fake compliances, hiding our true desires, suppressing that healthy anger in partnership. Because remember, we don't have to always agree. We can fight, but we can do it in an intelligent way. That's what Chiron was telling us in the 7th house. So if a partner crossed the line and then we didn't use that Aries to kind of push back on it immediately, or that healthy passion kind of went missing in certain type of partnerships, then the heat in the relationship is going to kind of start like vanishing. And we're going to start experiencing deep intimacy issues. And maybe, I don't know, we're not going to have sex anymore. Or, I don't know, I'm going to have headache when it comes to sexual intercourse. Or, I don't know, we're going to have erectional, problems and all this type of stuff. So I can even imagine that. Or it's simply the inability to experience pleasure or the inability to trust the partner on a bodily level or even kind of like on a mental level as well. Also, if we are treating the relationship as an endless war zone and then we are kind of like constantly in fight, then this could actually indicate that those relationship emergencies are kind of like the last straw. And it kind of becomes a panic. Like, let's say my partner decided to leave for a younger woman, for example. And then all of a sudden I knew it was coming, but I kind of didn't believe that. So that the eighth house is about a psychological regeneration. So, but at the beginning, we are panicking. We are in a survival mode. Oh, I'm too old to find a new husband, a new business partner, or stuff like that. So it could be an irrational fear of loss, or being betrayed, or getting financially ruined. So the healing for you is that you have to have those dangerous conversations within those partnerships. You're gonna have to pick the household fights. Who is gonna clean the toilet? Not only me. State your material term and make sure that you are aware of your own power. You have to realize that you can love someone without completely kind of like surrendering. And you can make your own choices as well. So you have to have the courage to stand firmly in your independent power within certain relationships. And it's kind of like telling them, this is who I am, and these are my terms. Take it or leave it. Scorpio rising sign. So the shift is going to be happening between your 6th and 7th house. And the 6th house that demands that you aggressively manage your daily life, that you have to treat your body and workload kind of fairly in an independent way. But if you are failing to claim your personal power in your day-to-day operation, then this energy is going to kind of crash your marriages, your business partnerships, your contractual agreements. So, like you are over-functioning at work. You are failing to draw sharp boundaries around your time, or you are treating yourself like a slave to your daily routines because you are the one who is always washing up the plates or doing all the household chores, or you are allowing others to take advantage of you at work. So it's about having to maintain your daily schedule. It's like you have to learn to say that I'm the master of my own time. I'm going to be protecting my physical energy. I will not let a job or a routine run me into the ground or take over my life, basically. But if we didn't do that, we fail the 6th-house tests. And then it's going to lead to a stagnant, kind of like heavy relationship trap. And you might start attracting people who can try to keep you in a cage. And then, of course, again, like I mentioned in the previous one as well, we stay with a partner because it's, I don't know, splitting the mortgage is too complicated, or we are staying in a work agreement, which is actually draining you, but it feels heavy to break, or it's illegal, or something like that. But also, ignoring the physical warnings of your body as well, because you have been overworking, or you are super angry with your colleagues or at work. Like I said at the beginning as well, Aries is like an alarm bell. So it rings the bell that something is not good in your body, and there might be some inflammation, some high fever, some type of sharp physical pain as well, because the boundaries of the physical body got violated, basically. And how is that going to manifest in the seventh house? Well, that unexpressed stress is going to move into your one-to-one connections. So it's an emotional and kind of sensory shutdown in the partnership. And then you become entirely numb to your spouse or your business partner. You cannot feel the beauty of connection, the touch, or you don't feel supported in your partnership. You look at that person you are building a life with and kind of feel absolutely disconnected or cold. And then your body can even go kind of rigid as well, because you didn't remove the stress from your daily lifestyle first. Like, it's always you who is picking up the kids. And then, because Taurus Scorpio axis is about sharing and giving. So because I am picking up the kids every single day from school, the partner is not getting involved. So I kind of like, I start having that numbness towards the partner. So, or you are treating your everyday life or task like an emergency, or I'm picking fights over small details. So the manifestation would be is that it's going to be kind of like an explosive resistance from the partner. So no, I'm not doing it. And then it becomes an agonizing kind of like standoff, because the partner is pushing back against, like, you have been asking them to put the plates on in a certain way into the cupboard. And then they are going to refuse to do that. And they're going to be like, okay, let me just piss them off. So the healing for you, Scorpio, is that you have to reclaim your daily schedule. You have to stop over functioning for others. Cut out certain type of daily tasks or jobs that drain your life force. Go back to the gym. Treat health as a boundary. Listen to your body's like natural, like physical alerts. And when it says stop working, then drop the tools and basically protect your time fiercely. So you have to have the courage to stand up for your own physical well-being and run your own daily life, so that that seventh house Taurus container can naturally align with you, and the relationship can shift from that stagnant obligation to something more fertile. And then we are going to be mutually supporting each other, and we are leading towards a financial growth. Sagittarius rising sign. So the shift is happening between your fifth house to the sixth house. So the fifth house demands that you are having fun, that you are taking risks in life, that you express your heart desire. But if you fail to channel your authentic fire into, your passions, your creative identity, again, that unexpressed energy will collapse into your sixth house, which is the house of daily routines and physical body. So let me give you some examples. What if you are suppressing your creative impulses and playing it safe and refusing to launch your unique passion projects? Because you are meant to be claiming, yeah, this is my art, this is my business idea, I'm putting my name on it, raw and unfiltered. But if you shrink back out of, I don't know, the desire to have predictability, or treating your passion as childish, or refuse to take gambles, you are basically not monetizing your unique talents. You have failed your fifth house test. And then in the sixth house, it's going to be a heavy, monotonous, underpaid daily workload, because you are finding yourself trapped in this kind of soul-crushing routine, where you have exchanged your precious time for kind of like an uninspiring paycheck. So therefore, it can represent financial limitations. It could be representing these grueling, stagnant grind, because you haven't taken any type of risk. You suppress the joy, because a Sagittarius rising should be like their vitality, for example, is very dependent on how much fun they have, or how good their romantic life is, or their kind of like sexual life is. So there is a biological urge here to enjoy life, sharing the stage with others. So if we don't do that, then this can lead to some physical issues, health issues, throat, neck, thyroid. Digestive assimilation of food can become an issue. Or let's say with the fifth house, you had to be getting to the gym, because the fifth house is gym exercises that we do for pleasure. Well, if we haven't done that, then Chiron in Taurus can cause actually some type of chronic fatigue as well. Or again, stubborn weight holding as well. Because the body is going to start saying that, okay, if you are not going to turn your life into, or if you are going to turn your life into this purely like functional machine with no room for joy or creative self-expression, or I don't know, going on holidays, then I'm just going to physically slow you down. I'm going to slow down your metabolism just to match that dullness of the reality that you are creating for yourself. So that's how that exhaustion could be coming in, basically. So the healing blueprint for you, Sagittarius, is that you have to take a gamble. You have to stop hiding your talents. You have to be launching that passion project, or you have to do something with your hobby and then turn it into maybe a passive income, even if it feels messy. Prioritize play a little bit, or look at playing around as a medical necessity. I mean, I'm going to give you another, a little bit nastier example, but the reason why it came to my mind, because I had a client recently who Chiron with the moving through the fifth house, and I asked about her sex life, and she said, "Oh, I haven't had sex for like 7 years. I don't miss it at all." Huh? What's the red flag there, guys? Well, the fifth house is very highly sexual. So in the sixth house, that could actually manifest as sexual illnesses, such as, I don't know, something to do with the womb, or, because like I said at the beginning, Taurus is very much about fertility. So you have to look at play as a medical necessity. And it's not just about the sex element, okay? But any type of play. So Sagittarius, it's about having the courage to stand boldly in your unique self. And you have the right to create. You have the right to play. So then your sixth house is going to get better. And then that you are going to start generating, let's say, income out of these risks that you have taken. Capricorn rising. So the transition is happening between your fourth and fifth house. And the fourth house demands that you are separating yourself from familial conditionings. And it's about fiercely protecting your private emotional peace, establishing that independent inner foundation. It's about claiming your personal power in your personal life as well as in your roots. So if I have got these parents kind of like bugging me all the time, then let them walk out of my life. And then finally, you can, find play or romance, or even build wealth by taking risk. So, but I want to give you, some examples. So Aries on the fourth cusp is failing to individualize yourself from family expectations, carrying those ancestral burdens and keeping the peace at home, basically. because Capricorn is a bit of a caretaker. It's not the most caretaking type of sign, but it works extremely hard to be able to take care of the families. So it is asking you to look at your lineage and say, you know what, this war is going to end with me. I'm drawing a fierce boundary line against ancestral pattern. I'm not going to be repeating the same crap like my parents or my grandparents or my great grandparents did. And I'm not going to let the family guilt dictate who I am. If you didn't do that, you fail the test. So is that going to manifest in your fifth house? It's going to be a creative block, a constant fear of taking risks in life, and then maybe you become a caretaker of a parent in the middle of you wanting to launch your own business, just as an idea. You might have got these brilliant ideas for business or artistic projects, but you feel like completely frozen, or you are unable to monetize your talents, or you are experiencing some invisible financial ceiling because you are subconsciously trying to keep your reality small or safe, or you are still somehow focusing on other people's life, such as parents or whoever we live together with, or something that got passed down for you from generation to generation. Such as, oh, this family is always going to fail in business endeavors. So that might be holding you back from uh, launching a creative project. But also, what if you are expressing your emotional anger, fourth house, ignoring childhood wounds, pretending that your personal life is stable when it's actually a battlefield? Because the fourth house is very private, it's your emotional world, and it's very raw. It's packed with heat because of Aries. So you have to be clearing out this domestic chaos. You have to be clearing out the roots of your relationship problems. Uh, it kind of tells you that I've got the right to be in a relationship. I've got the right to have a happy relationship. But what did I inherit from my parents? So, or you kind of feel like that, oh, I have to stay strong. I have to appear strong and composed at all times. So all this energy move into your fifth house, the house of romance and physical pleasure. So it's like I'm getting frozen when I go on a date, or it's kind of like a sensory numbness in my love life. And I'm unable to date. I draw in relationships that feel like dry, or we become a functional roommate in a relationship. Your heart kind of goes rigid, your body goes rigid. So you don't know how to flirt, you don't enjoy the physical touch, there's no artistic joy, because your internal engine is kind of like still locked up. You're still kind of like working on that unhealed chaos at the very base of your chart, at the root of your chart. Or this could be a fertility or parenting bottleneck as well. Like you are really trying to buy a home, or you are really trying to create your own family, and so on. And then, but the fourth house is reminding you that maybe you had a chaotic childhood experience that you haven't worked through yet. That's why the baby is not coming, because you haven't dealt with it yet. And maybe the doctors are going to say that, no, there is nothing wrong with me. So these are some of the um, or there could be a lot of anxiety surrounding the idea of parenting as well. Like I'm constantly worried about my children. So remember, the internal baseline is a war zone. Then you are not opening that fertility container of that fifth house. So you are not growing, you are not experiencing something new. If you have children, then it can show up as like I'm going to become a controlling like parent, because I'm trying to manage my kids out of fear that, I don't know, they are not going to have money or food on the table. And so you can become a suffocating parent. So the healing for you, Capricorn, is that you have to find private peace. You have to clear those subconscious ground. You have to create these brutal boundaries with family or anyone who kind of disrupts your home life in a way. And you have to realize that you have the right to enjoy life, and you can build wealth, and you can create art. Okay, so let's see if anyone has got anything to say. No, okay. So remember, we are going to come up with the Q&A in free signs time. So Aquarius rising sign. The transition is happening between your third and fourth house. So the third house is that I use my mind fiercely. I'm going to be speaking sharply. I'm going to be, excuse me, just there is this mosquito bugging me and annoys me now. What was I saying? That you can cut through the local drama, family drama. I'm going to be a pioneering person with my intellect. But if you are unable to claim your voice, you let your mind spin, kind of like in these wheel of daily anxiety, then all those are going to be falling into your family dynamics, and then that creates a bottleneck there. So it's like when you're swallowing your words with your siblings or your neighbors, trying to play nice just to keep the peace, or even out of fear that, I don't know, they are going to do something with me, or you're not kind of like claiming your terms with these people. You are an Aquarius rising, so you are intellectually, you should, like Aries on the third house card said that I have to be intellectually direct. I have to speak my raw mind. I have to kind of clear the air as well. I have to be sitting down with these people. I'm not going to listen to gossip. I'm going to be walking up to, let's say, to my sister. I'm going to ask them, listen, what's wrong with you? Why are you spreading this rumor about me? Or the neighbor. And then you might even figure out that they haven't done anything wrong. And then you see the other side of the coin. So it's about telling people that this is my perspective. I'm not filtering it to keep you comfortable. So if I cower away from these kind of verbal confrontations, you might be masking your frustrations with sarcasm, or you're letting people cross the boundaries in everyday interactions, and then you let them make dirty jokes and stuff like that. Then all these are going to be crashing down your fourth house, which is your family, your home, your family. So that might be a stubborn financial or domestic kind of gridlock that you are experiencing. And you can get trapped in property disputes with family, stuck living in an environment that feels kind of like claustrophobic, or unable to buy a home you want because your resources are tangled up, or any type of physical house or domestic situation kind of becomes an immovable, kind of like frustrating object, a burden. So, but also the third house is, you have to learn to allow your mind to run on a bit of an adrenaline. But we might start overthinking, we might be picking very petty, kind of like intellectual wars with others. So having a war zone with some people, basically. So then the fourth house is your privacy. That's the deepest part of your chart. So it could represent somehow a somatic kind of like domestic paralysis, when you are unable to relax in your house, or you don't feel safe in your house because people are knocking on the door, or you feel somehow threatened. Your body can actually experience some physical symptoms as well. Also, the fourth house is connected to sleep also, so we can experience sleep problems also. So you might end up waking up in the middle of the night hearing voices, or a literal voice loss, or you start talking in your dreams because you didn't know how to talk to these family members about ways of you getting hurt. Or, the third house is how we are processing data. So you are meant to be um, shattering the local taboos, and you are meant to be showing the world your independent mindset. So with the fourth house, it could it could be a deep-seated feeling of being outcasted or rejected within your own family vault, and it can feel like that they're not listening to your opinion anymore. They don't listen to what you have got to say, and it can feel like that I don't belong to any clan. So you have to realize that your private sense of belonging, Taurus in the fourth house cusp, actually can only be unlocked when you aggressively claim your right to think, to speak differently from anyone around you. So, kind of like the to-do list for you, Aquarius, is that you have to speak clean, direct. Stop smoothing things over, Pick that fight and state your boundaries with those siblings, colleagues, peers. Treat your mind like a high performance engine that needs sometimes a bit of a cooling down because the phone overheats. So we have to sometimes switch that off. So shift your focus basically, and make sure that you anchor your private worth, realizing that your right to physical comfort, peace, stability is entirely dependent on your willingness to aggressively defend your own mental health. Like, how much does it bother me that, I don't know, my siblings are talking about me? How does that affect my core? Because the fourth house is core. Pisces rising sign. The shift is happening between your second and third house. So the second house demands you that you use your relationship with money and value in an in a great way, right? So it's about being a financial pioneer. It's about claiming your worth aggressively. It's about looking at your earning power as a tool of self-determination. So if you fail to claim your financial sovereignty, letting your self-worth kind of like run on a survival panic, then all these are going to be crashing into your third house, which is the house of voice and mind. So that becomes a restless mindset. So, maybe you have been playing small financially, undercharging for your skills, or failing to treat your unique talent as kind of like a weapon for independence. Because you have to be a financial warrior. You have to be saying confidently that this is my price, this is my value. I will not negotiate my baseline survival for other people's comfort. If you didn't do that, then most likely you have been struggling with some self-worth issue. And then you have been treating money as a taboo topic, lowering the prices of your service, hoping that someone else will save you, and so forth. So in the third house, it's going to be like an experience of a muted voice, and you end up not being able to speak up in a meeting, or you don't know how to share your ideas. You might feel like that I have run out of ideas. I don't know how to generate income anymore. I don't know how to write articles anymore that I used to be able to be good at. So your voice becomes like your voice is not respected anymore. You can have the anxiety of the financial anxiety leads to overthinking and speaking freely. It's like it's like you're not booking a reading with me. So I feel like I have to change my tone of voice, and I'm going to have to, I don't know, be aggressive, or I'm going to have to be calmer, because I think that that's the reason why you're not buying a reading from me anymore. So I change the way I deliver my message. So that's the third house manifestation there. Of course, you might be in a hyper mode, like a hyper driven mode, and then, you look at your bank account as a constant emergency zone. And then you are kind of like on the survivor cortisol constantly. So, but you might be living from paycheck to paycheck, or you're being worried or panicking about your next bill. So you're trying to aggressively overwork to kind of build that financial shield. But then Chiron in the third house is not using the brain, right? And it's not coming up with new ideas because I'm too bogged down with all the work that I'm meant to be doing. And maybe I just have to communicate more. So your mind can become rigid and then stubborn as well. No, I'm stuck in this repetitive thing. I'm anxious about my security. I'm not changing my strategies. I'm not going to take financial risk. So your financials are potentially collapsing. Or, the second house is kind of like allowing others to dictate your self-worth rather than weaponizing your skills and your assets. So what's going to happen in the third house? You might find yourself in some passive aggressive kind of like standoffs over contracts, financial obligations, family assets, and so on. So Pisces, what you are meant to be doing is that you are meant to be fighting for your true value. You're meant to be claiming your material sovereignty, stop undercharging, inject that fire into a business idea, demand high standards for your time and skills, and believe that you have got the skills, and then believe that your time is worth the money, and then kind of charge accordingly. And you have the right to speak your truth, you have the right to think clearly, and you have the right to experience daily peace as well. But it's highly dependent on your willingness to fiercely defend your own values first. And last but not least, Aries rising sign. So the shift is happening from your first to the second house. And the first house demands that your physical presence, your identity, that you use it in a very fierce way. You should be the ultimate pioneer. It's like taking that on, like taking a personal risk. It's about establishing an unapologetic sense of I am. And if you fail to claim that raw personal power, or letting your identity run on a frantic kind of unchecked ego defensiveness, that unexpressed or misdirected fire moves into your second house, which is your bank account. So what does that mean? You are hiding your true power because I want to appear polite, or I refuse to stand out as a leader. So you are all about having to be about taking independent pioneering actions. It's about you walking into a room and then boldly occupy space without asking for permission. So if you shrink back on that, then we are going to be experiencing certain type of financial issues. And you are going to be working incredibly hard, staying underpaid because you didn't take a personal risk. Or kind of like living from paycheck to paycheck, or unable to, I don't know, live the life that you kind of like have promised to yourself. But the first house is also about your physical body as well. So if you are treating your physical body like a machine, or you are like there is a war within your body. So you have been trying to conquer a certain type of an illness, for example, or you have been exhausted, or you have been going through kind of like this high octane stress, then because you are trying to use your willpower to kind of override the physical pain and the signals of a burnout, and how is that going to manifest in the second house? You're going to have health issues, basically. It's a metabolic stagnation, it's a chronic issues, it's a weight retention, bodily fluid retention, because your body is telling you that if you don't treat your physical identity like or if you are going to treat your physical body as a battlefield, I will physically slow down your metabolism, and I'm just going to be protecting you from your own cortisol. So we can have hormonal issues happening, we can have food issues happening. But the first house is your personal brand. It shows how you navigate the world. So you're meant to be building this independent identity that doesn't need external validation to feel real. So in the second house, this could it could be materializing as a stubborn need to hoard things just to feel secure, because I'm not secure in who I am. So we are overcompensating by buying expensive things, staying stuck in bad investments because you're afraid to lose. So you're clinging onto a financial routine out of fear. And even it could indicate for an Aries rising sign, unfortunately, divorce as well, especially if your relationship department has been struggling for a while. For the healing blueprint for you is that you have to own your raw power. You are the one who gives yourself the green light. Go out in the world and take those risks and claim yourself as a distinct leader. Treat your body as a temple. Stop burning out your engine every single day, or stop going for the cheap adrenaline, because we can be chasing things that are just giving us a moment of pleasure in a way. So listen to your body's physical limits and anchor your wealth basically in inner certainty. Your absolute security doesn't come from what you own, but it comes from that confidence in your ability that I can survive any kind of like hardship, basically. So it's you about standing in your authentic raw identity. So that second house is going to make a better relationship with money. And instead of living kind of like in an anxious prison, you can move into this lush, fertile kind of like world. Oh, wow, guys. We have gone through the 12 signs. Like I said at the beginning, it has become a little bit of a longer video, and I'm pretty tired. But I'm wondering if you have got any questions. It's general questions that I can be answering. If you have got questions about your personal chart, I have to see the chart. So I cannot give you tips and hints, a full reading on your chart. So please bear that in mind. Chiron is at 26-degree Taurus, exactly conjunct Algol in the 11th house, the apex of a youth, Cancer rising. Does this mean something bad is coming? Well, I've given a description to Cancer rising signs, so you might want to be revisiting that. And I've given tips and hints how to manifest that in a good way. Yes. And like I said, I always need to see the chart, where the rulers are, where Mars, where Venus is, and so on. So that's why I don't go into these guessing games of a personal chart, because I don't want to ruin my credibility just to keep the time go. So I surely won't do that. I have Chiron in the 10th house, Taurus, with Black Moon, Lilith. Well, that's a very interesting one because, Black Moon Lilith is a fierce archetype. I've made a video, by the way, about Black Moon Lilith recently. Well, because Black Moon Lilith this year has been mainly in Capricorn, Sagittarius, and Scorpio, back and forth between the three signs. That's why I made a video about it. Now it's still in the sign of Sagittarius, and it's going to be opposing the full moon. I made a full moon video, 2.5 hours. It's available on the special YouTube channel, which is for paid members. So if you are curious about that. But Black Moon Lilith is all about fierceness. So that's it. The Black Moon Lilith is about, I don't give a crap about what my boss wants me to do. I don't give a crap about what others think I should be doing. I'm going to go for something that I truly want. And I'm going to be stepping into my leadership role. So if you are struggling with leadership, and if you are struggling with being visible in the world, then this Chiron transit is a little bit more on the difficult side. Okay, any other questions? I mean, Chiron and Algol together is actually interesting one. Algol is often connected to falling from grace. But again, what house does that fall into, we said? I can't see. 11th house. So I've given tips and hints there already with what happens in the 11th house. But our goal is often about falling from grace. So one idea that I'm kind of like having, because also our goal actually represents our untamed power, very similar to Black Moon Lilith in that sense. So imagine that when we are terrified of being kind of angry or having to be polite all the time, but it's often a very suppressed feminine nature there. It's something that cuts you off from power. So this could indicate a loss of a job, for example. It could indicate that, I don't know, YouTube blocks your YouTube channel, or certain type of alliances that are about to be ending, or the long-term revenue streams from your career is getting cut off, and I don't know, they forget to send you your salary and all this type of stuff. So often with Algol, and Chiron is like the outcast kings. Algol is like rejection. So I'm getting rejected by a group of people. I'm getting rejected by a friend. So a friend who kind of like departs out of my life, for example. Actually, it might indicate that early in life, you might have experienced some brutal rejections from people, and maybe you felt like an absolute alien among young people, or you got bullied at school. I can imagine something like that. And then you got scared of speaking your uncomfortable truth in those groups and stuff like that. So the reality should be now that I'm going to start working on how to fit in, how to build my own independent tribe, to become a leader of some sort, bringing those outcasted people together. But the 11th house is about money, often about money. So like I said, it's very difficult to say knowing where Venus or Mars are. So actually, I'm going to find here, but this might be about you find or being the voice of those people who have been outcasted, um, like outmaneuvered of some sort, displayed, stripped of voice. So you have to find your voice again, and so on. So just a couple of ideas on that. Good. So guys, thank you very much. If there is no other questions, then I loved having you here. And I will see you next Saturday. I should be online. Maybe we are going to be looking at Mercury retrograde, or we are going to be again talking about Chiron, just a little bit more in a positive way. So can you let me know in the chat box below, which one do you want to talk about next week? Chiron in a more positive manner, in a shorter video, or we are going to be talking about Mercury retrograde. Have a lovely weekend, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.